What's up, fish
Daddy-O's?
sticks? No, we rehearsed this.
I thought we went with Daddy-O's.
No, it was... Well, what's up? We're 15 Seconds of Fish. Our third member is currently hanging on the wall up there. That sounded way darker than I intended it to. She's fine. She lives in Kingston. We live in Ottawa. It's nearly Christmas break, and our present to you guys is we're gonna break down some of our songs from our last EP, talk about how we made them, the thought process behind them, and some cool tips you can learn about production and metal in general along the way. Don't go anywhere. Let's get into it. Welcome to the 15 Seconds of Fish studio, also known as Kim's room. Today we'll be breaking down the first track off our EP, which is the self-titled 15 Seconds of Fish. I believe the word is eponymous. So I started it off with some piano, which is played in through MIDI. The way this worked is I actually connected my MIDI keyboard to Logic, and I played in all the notes and edited them afterwards, but you can see all the info from my foot pressing the sustain pedal made it over. And what this can do, along with how hard I was pressing each note, which is called the velocity, what this can do is really add a human touch to your music. If you know how to play piano, this is a great way to get piano notes on the page. And then what I do later on is I supplement them with some... So the higher notes here, I've added in by clicking them in with the mouse. Because I'm not that talented, I could only really do the arpeggios. After this, we start to hear some chants. Now, these chants...
Hold on! You didn't let me explain what this song means to me.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Okay, so it's a political commentary on why fish shouldn't be able to vote.
Okay, this wasn't discussed prior to the actual composition, but a little bit of a J.K. Rowling situation there. But... What we do here is we have a large group of people, or so it seems, chanting. 15 seconds, 15 seconds, 15 seconds. The original recording for this is actually, if I can find it here, it's what I like to call a virtual stadium. I actually invited, here it is, I actually invited a whole bunch of our friends and college classmates into the audio recording room and recorded them one at a time, repeating the phrase 15 seconds of fish. And if I just solo some of these, if it will let me.
This is interesting now. I want to see. Wait, who individually do you have?
15 seconds. We got 15 seconds. 15 seconds of...
And then there are tons of these. I did...
Who? Oh, that's Emma.
Is that Emma?
Yeah, re-listen to it. It's
yeah,
Emma.
that is Emma. So that's how we got the stadium sound. So pretty much I took all that, I bounced it in place, which just renders it out to one audio file. I layered that with 3 different pitches, low, original pitch, and pitched up, and that makes it sound like 3 times as many people, some reverb. We have the stadium, and then that's mixed in, and I did some time remapping to make sure they were saying it right on the beat and eliminate the human error.
The human error!
The human error, of which there will always be with, live vocals. What happens next is we go into a very cinematic sounding section. We have Kim playing guitar live, we have a synth guitar, we have a whole bunch of orchestral instruments.
I also played violin throughout this.
So we have a trumpet section.
I was also the trumpet section.
We have strings, which are always my favorite to include.
I also did that. That's just me with a bow and my guitar. Yeah?
You can get your guitar to sound like that.
I'm very talented.
What pedal is that?
What pedal?
Or does it just sound like that because you're just that skilled?
I'm that skilled.
All right. We like sub bass in 15 Seconds of Fish. It's not something that you find in traditional metal, but I personally come from an EDM background, and you can't have EDM or electronic music in general, most genres, without sub bass. So we just put a big, low...
I made that sub bass.
Yes, you did, Kim.
Thank you.
Yes, you did.
Thank you.
Next, we have a retardando, which I always find interesting.
Whoa! We can't say that word anymore.
It means... It means to slow down.
Whoa! Cancel Ben 2019 or 2020. Let's just move it into the next year. Why not?
This is all you, Kim. It's a cool little falling kick drum pattern here, so it starts really high and goes all the way back to an actual kick drum. That's literally just a kick drum looping with a high pass filter on it, so the frequency gets lower and lower. And by the time it comes down, it actually becomes the lead-in to the next part of the song. After the breakdown, it actually starts to build.
Okay, so I'm kicking you out as main producer. I am now producer. Okay, so we're just gonna keep going. So you hear this chunky dubstep. That's all me.
I don't know if you class that as dubstep.
You know?
She did that with her own voice.
Yeah.
No, but in reality, it's a distorted sine wave, and it's coming out of Massive. A lot of people say Massive is a dying plugin. I disagree. It's a killer plugin. This is actually a pretty simple patch. I call it the fish fryer. And really, it's just a sine wave with a pitch envelope. So it goes like that. And it's side chained, so every time the kick hits, the volume cuts out for a second. I guess you could use it as like a trap bass, but here I'm using it to kind of form the main sound. But then in this drop section, we keep on layering. So that's the first thing you hear. The next thing you hear is this. I know Kim likes that noise. This noise is actually pretty cool. It's another Massive patch. We got it to play 2 notes at once. So for every 1 note drawn in the MIDI window, it actually plays 2. This is again Massive. We have a square sine wave tuned more to, or a square saw tuned more to saw, and a square saw tuned more to square. One is playing the root note, and the other is playing the same note 16 semitones up. And what that is doing is it's creating a chord, but one of the higher note is played on a square, the lower is played on a saw, so you get like a saw bass and a square lead. Kind of cool. The next thing you hear is one of my favorite sounds in the whole song. I just labeled it here plop synth. This is supposed to sound kind of like a fish out of water, again keeping in the fish theme. This is a fun sound. So what this actually is an orchestral, what do you call this?
I don't know.
Mallets, that's the word. They're mallets.
Floppy boys.
Ploppy boys, yes.
Slappy boys.
They're a pair of slappy boys that's being clicked together, and with no effects, it sounds like this. You add in a compressor that brings all the levels down to the same level and then gains the volume of all of them. So now we can hear the reverb as loud as the main sound. Let me just loop this. The next thing we did is a pitch shifter. Now this is mixed halfway so that it's playing 5 semitones below at 72% of the volume of the actual thing. So now we're hearing 2 sounds at once layered on top of each other. Ring shift starts to make it a bit wonky.
This is what my idea of hell is. Just the sound.
I mean, I'd like to live here personally, but flanger sounds like a flanger. It's hard to describe what a flanger does. Phaser is where a lot of the wetness comes from, and by this point it sounds like a fish. So it's not actually a synth, it's a sampler of an orchestral instrument, again preset for Logic, the orchestral kit, with a crap ton of effects on it until it sounds like a fish flopping. That's how we do music. What else here? We also have one thing that I did here that took some inspiration from actual tracks I listened to, is we dropped the bass out and make it sound like it's really far back in the mix, almost like you're listening to it through a microphone like this one, and it's being played through speakers at the front end of an empty club. Now we drop it way back, and then we bring it forward again. In context. And that is a technique I learned from Barely Alive, old tutorial for their song Doggo. It's a good technique, and I like it. I did it sort of my own way. I didn't use the same presets or effects as they did. I made it work with Logic Space Designer and some automation. So that's pretty much the drop. Oh, of course, we have some synth guitar to maintain the metal theme, because after 8 bars of that, I thought we were deviating a bit too far from the main theme of our sound as a band, so I threw in, if I can find it, some guitar again. Where is it? Right here. And that guitar sounds very fat. That is power chords being run through an OTT, which again is a killer plugin for lots of musicians these days. Everyone loves their OTT, and 15 Seconds of Fish is no exception. No OTT? With OTT. This really, it takes the highs, it pushes them up the way I've said it on this specific track. And yeah, that's the drop essentially. Going into the final bit, we have a nice but powerful cinematic outro.
I call this spoon in a garbage disposal with drums. Ooh. Ooh.
Honestly, that's the best description I've heard of it yet, and the only description I've heard of it yet. But Kim led this section, so many thanks to Kim. If we can find her guitar part, she is behind 90% of the chords here. I've thrown a noise gate on her playing, so every time the kick hits, it cuts out the high frequencies.
Can I explain the meaning behind it?
Yeah.
I play guitar. Guitar make noise. I make noise guitar. Thank you.
It's beautiful. And what better note to close off on than a countdown to 15, which is, if I don't know if anyone's timed it, but it actually is a 15-second countdown, which is why I have the time ruler up here so I could time that out properly. And that's just a text-to-speech engine being run through BitSpeak.
1.
This is the original
3,
with BitSpeak.
4, 5, 6,
That's gross.
8,
It's creepy.
9.
I'm into it.
That is essentially 15 Seconds of Fish, the intro. Is there anything you wanted to add, Kim?
So as I was saying about it being about a political commentary. Yeah, it's political commentary on why fish shouldn't vote. They don't got brain cells.
I feel like it's borderline discrimination against fish kind everywhere. So like, if we're gonna identify as fish kind, I think we need to be better
Did you
than
call them fish? Wait, what did you call the fans earlier?
that. I called them fish sticks.
That's dead fish, Ben.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Thanks for tuning in. If you have any questions for us, drop them in the comments below or reach us on Instagram at 15SOF_band. Be sure to DM us there with any questions, and we'll be happy to make a follow-up video or just answer you through text. Thank you very much. We'll be back in the next video.